trying to figure out if we have a quorum. As we have one extra person from the normal, so we actually have 10. Yeah. And there's 5 of us here. Because you don't know. Can't count you here for that. We double
So is there someone else has to make the motions based on the recommendations?
Yeah. That's good. Well, what I'm going to do is go ahead and call the meeting to order. And I actually think that because we've had permission to maintain our council structure through this year, that actually our students are eligible to vote, which then gives us a quorum. So why don't we move forward? And the first thing that we need is approval of the agenda for today, which Dr. Shaw has passed out. Can I have a motion? Claire makes, Ms. Martin makes the motion. Is there a second? Joined by seconds. Are there any comments, questions, additions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Great. Then the next item is approval of the minutes. As is our agreed practice, we email these out, so we're not making physical copies of the minutes. And thanks to Dr. Shaw and Mr. Blackwell for their excellent note-taking skills at our last meeting. It's always nice to know you have something to fall back on. Were there any, well, first I need a motion to approve the minutes.
I will do the minutes from the afternoon.
Okay, and so Dr. Sawyer makes the motion. Second session. Okay, any changes, questions, comments? All right, all in favor of the say aye. Okay, great. All right, our next item is a report from our new principal, although I don't think we get to count as new anymore.
More gray hairs, so I guess.
So we will turn the conversation over to you.
Sure. As per the agenda, let me do a few things, and there's a couple things that we don't have, and I will explain why. But one of the things you all have, and this will be made available, is a list of new teachers as of yesterday. We are, correct me Mr. Blackwell back there if I'm wrong, we are fully hired except for I think a supply teacher, correct? Or a long-term sub, right?
We even have that?
We do, there we go, we're fully done. And Miss Lupe Barron, who's been in the front office and has served well, she has resigned her position to do her student teaching, so we are going to hunt diligently to find a replacement for her, although she is irreplaceable. But this is a list of the new staff. As you can see, there is a lot. One of the things we've talked about as an admin team, as a leadership team, is trying to keep that from happening and have less turnover from year to year. But that is our new staff, and we're very excited about these folks. They're very passionate, very in tune. They've already been here longer, probably than they had to be, working to get ready for the school year. So some very talented, some veterans, some new. It's a pretty good mix. So that is our new staff. Administrator roles and responsibilities, that is basically done. The only reason I don't have it today is we still have a few things on there to finalize. So as soon as that is done, which should be in the next couple days, that will go on the website. And along with that, one of the things we're working on for orientation and for the beginning of the year is one of the things the PTSA was requested, which is a who's who list. Who do I go to if I need this? Who do I go to if I need that? And we're working on that to distribute. And then another thing that we're working on is an FAQ, frequently asked questions, which we made available for orientation. So I think that, coupled with the administrative roles and responsibilities, will at least give parents guidelines if they have a question. And I never mind getting emails or phone calls, but sometimes it's easier to just go to the person who's responsible. So that will be coming out soon. Let me talk about the budget. And being new, I don't know, and I'm certainly open to any suggestions or criticisms about the best way to approach this. But if you'll flip to the second page, what you have in front of you, and I'll go through this briefly and you can just eyeball it as you wish, is our budget for next year. And coming on board this summer, I inherited and felt very comfortable just for the most part rolling over what we had done last year. As I become familiar with the school and familiar with our needs, obviously as we begin the budget process for next year, I'll have more insight and more input. The only thing that is not reflected here, Ms. Murphy's back there, so correct me if I'm wrong, is that we just recently used our school funds to purchase from the district a .17 of a French teacher. And that was to make sure we were able to provide the higher level French for our IB kids, that needed it. So that may not be reflected here, Ms. Murphy, I don't think it is it? Because we just got the approval on that the other day. But basically what you can do is you can look through, and this is the first page is our teaching allotments, and this is what we've earned. That means based on the number of kids projected for the school year and what we have used. So it's pretty self-explanatory. There's your certified staff, and then at the bottom you have your paraprofessionals. Now, one thing I will say is that we are in the process, and Mr. Blackwell is diligently doing this, of making sure that we have enough students to support this staff. Within the first 10 days, what the district will do is they will look at our school and say how many warm bodies, how many kids actually showed up, and does it match the number of teachers that you have. So we could earn more if we have more kids show up, or conceivably, if we don't have as many students show up, we could lose some staff and have them be reassigned to a different school. So this is very important, and I know that we are keeping up with our enrollment numbers daily.
1694.
1694 right now, there you go. But, you know, we'll probably have many show up on the first day of school to register. The second page is support staff, and there you have your administrators, media specialists, resource officers. We have hired a new resource officer. His name is reflected there. It's Officer Parker. Other personnel, for example, we have some folks that may cluster psychologist, cluster social worker, what we call itinerant. They may not be here all day, but they travel from maybe us to Ridgeview or us to other schools. So that's your personnel allotments, and you're welcome to look at that. And if you have any questions, please let me know. The next is the actual dollars. And I would be lying to you if I had told you I had my head all the way around this yet, because I don't. But you're looking at FY 2014 school allotment, and just so you understand, the fiscal year, so the money year for the school district does not run January to December. It goes from July 1 to June 30th. So FY 2014 kicks in on July 1, and that's when we use quote-unquote fiscal year 2014 dollars. So you can basically look through there and see what we have been allocated. I'll tell you basically how this works. What happens is, when it comes to money for departments, is we develop a budget based on this amount that we give to the department heads. And Ms. Murphy and I are going to start that process next week, fair to say? And the department heads get a dollar amount, and this is the amount they have to spend for supplies, for resources, for things for their department. One of the things that I'm going to tell them is that it's important that they spend this year's money on this year's kids. So we don't want department heads to hoard money. First of all, you can't roll it over really anyway to next year. But we want to make sure that this year's students benefits from this year's dollars. So we're going to tell them, we're going to set some deadlines for some ordering to go on during the school year. Just very quickly, at the bottom, you see square footage. That is the permanent building space and the portable space. And what that tells us is our custodial allotments. Our custodians are allotted to us based on square footage. With that being said, a decision was made last year to go to contract services. And I'm assuming this has been a discussion at some point. Basically what that means is we have less custodial staff, but we do have a contract with a third-party maintenance crew that will come in at night and clean the common areas. And if you need more information on that, I'll be happy to help you. But that was a decision that was made last year, and we're going to keep that going. So if you flip the page again, and you can tell this was given to me because my name's on it, but sorry about that. This is a little more of a breakdown of the same amounts. For example, you can see how much is allocated for postage, how much is allocated for the cell phones that we use in the building to communicate during the day. You can also look and see how much is allocated for copiers. A lot of money. Instructional materials and supplies at the top. So you can thumb through that. You can also, if you go to the next page, for example, there you'll see, here's what we have put aside for maintenance, $35,000. Here's what we have for other professional services, security services. So all of that is allocated and outlined, and you can look through that. The last page of the budget is the non-personnel, and these are some things that we have to spend money on that don't necessarily relate to people or directly to foreign language, world language department, or the social studies department. For example, armored car service. We have to. That's an amount of money that they have to come every day and collect a sizable amount of cash when you consider the cafeteria and things like that. Magnet money that the district has given us to spend on the magnet program. IB exam fees. I know Mr. Kopkis is already hard at work making sure that money is spent. Athletic trainer. This is an arrangement that we have with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, where we have a trainer that comes out and keeps our kids safe when you consider heat illnesses, concussions, things like that. So again, where I started is I'm not sure exactly what the Governance Council wants to know, so I've pretty much thrown the kitchen sink at you. And if you have questions or concerns, or I don't understand what this means, If I don't know the answer, I can certainly find it out for you. But I try to give you everything in the future. If we need to pare it down or provide more information, we'll certainly do that. So before I move on to the next item, are there any questions about the budget? And if you don't have one now, that's fine. We can certainly answer them later. Anything that jumps out that, hey, I don't understand or need clarification? All right. The next thing in your packet, and we're going a little bit out of order, but I might as well keep up with this. What I've given you is our end-of-course test scores for spring 2013. And the one at the top, and I won't go through all of this, but I'll briefly break down what this means so it's a little easier to read. This is all obviously public information, and there are no student names on this. But this is, for example, the first one you have is U.S. history. So the first row across the top is all students, and then the N is the number of students tested. So last year, Riverwood tested 415 kids for U.S. history. The mean scale score, and I don't want to get too much into statistics, but a mean, of course, is an average. So this is the scale score, meaning from 0 to, or 100 to 500, whatever it is. This is where Riverwood kids score, 446. The thing and that's an important number for us. We want to look and compare how our students did compared to other students around the state. What usually gets reported in the paper is the pass rate. How many kids, how many percentage of students pass? So right across the top, 80% passed. Of those 80%, there's obviously 20% that did not meet, so they didn't pass. 80 plus 20 is 100. I'm not a math teacher, but I'll try that out. And then you also have the percent that meted. That's excellent grammar. The percent that met, which was 29%, and then, which is really cool, the percent that exceeded, 52. On the left, if you look down, these are just some different categories that the state breaks out our data. So we do have English language learners that are monitored. We have Section 504. Special ed categories, for example, if you look, we had 26 special ed students who tested on the U.S. history. Learning disabilities, 13 of those. And then other health impairments, what we call OHI, there was 8. We had 2 that were classified as autistic. So that's how you can look at that. It also breaks it down to gender, it breaks it down to ethnic group. So again, I won't go through all of these. On the far right, the 3 right columns is how the state did on this same test in spring 2013. So this gives us, as leaders in this building, which all of us are, a good point of comparison. And what I have told the staff is I don't compare us to averages, I compare us to the best. And what I will continue to do is look at, when we pull academic data, we're going to look at the best schools in the state to compare ourselves. So this is a lot of treasure trove of information. As we have talked about last meeting, and I know this has been a conversation before, we have some areas where our students are really excelling, and we have some areas where we have some students that do need some extra help and support, and we've already started the conversations on how to do that. Particularly our ELL students, that's an area of concern. That's not a surprise. We saw that last meeting. A lot of our Hispanic students not doing as well as we would like. So those are ELCT scores. I also gave you another handout. This is our AP scores. Again, broken down, not by student name, obviously, but just by the subject. And it looks like this. And it has my scribbles on it because I was trying to figure out percentages. So please don't check my math. Smart kids over there. But what this is a list of the tests that we gave last year. So you can tell we have music theory, 2D art, drawing portfolio, English lit, comparative. And for most colleges, it's graded on a scale of 1 to 5. And for most colleges, 3 or higher is considered passing. So as an AP teacher myself, which I was for many years, my goal was always to get as many kids to a 5 as I can. But 3 to 4 or 5 is considered quote unquote passing. And again, some schools will take a 3, some schools will not, some schools will take a 4. It just depends on where students are interested in applying. But you can look, and again, there's some great numbers on here. I mean, we've got some pass rates, comparative, which is a very difficult test. You had 92% pass rate. Human geography, I mean, we tested 155 kids. Oh, you don't? Oh, I'm sorry. Does anybody not have
It's
it?
a single sheet.
You got it.
That's
You
not
got it.
in
Here you
the
go,
packet.
Martha, there you go.
No, I have it, I have it.
Oh, okay.
I don't have it.
You guys got it? Okay.
I don't have one.
There you go, man. So anyway, some real good numbers on here. As I was talking about human geography, which is our 9th graders, 155 kids tested, which is a lot, 89.7, almost 90% pass rate. So there's a lot of really good things on here to report about how our AP kids are doing. Very proud of that and look to continue that and strengthen it. I will also add, as an AP teacher myself, that I've always preached that it takes about 3 years for a teacher to really get super comfortable with the content. AP is much more in depth, it's much more detailed, it's much more rigorous. So as I once made the mistake of thinking, oh, since I taught for this, I can just go jump in and do AP. And for a teacher's perspective, it always doesn't work like that. So we've got some folks working really hard on that. Okay, if you continue in the packet, and I apologize for jumping around, you will also see.
Can I just stop?
Yeah, of course we can.
So on the AP scores, I just want to make sure,
Yes,
because I
ma'am.
was looking for it when you were talking.
I'm
This
sorry.
is the percentage that scored a 3 or higher?
Yes, ma'am. What we call the pass percentage.
Okay.
That's why it's kind of handwritten in my chicken scratch.
Okay. So on both of these, the end of course test and the AP scores, I believe the school system produces a report that shows each school compared to the school system
They do.
and other schools in the school system. I would find that of more interest than comparison to the state average.
I agree. Okay.
I'm not real interested in how we're doing compared to the state of Georgia. And I actually just tried to access the end of course test data on the website, but then the link's not working.
No, I don't think that's been released yet as far as how we compare to those schools in the system. Has it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Or at least how we compare to the system average.
Sure.
So if maybe if we could get that for next month.
Sounds good.
The other thing I would like to see on the end of course test is, while the percent passing is helpful, I believe there's also a grade equivalent that's reported, which I think is a more useful measure than the percent passing.
Mhm.
You can pass with a pretty low percentage,
you
you
can.
know, so.
That's why the mean scale scores.
The mean, and, but I think the average grade conversion is something that's on a 1 to 100 scale, and it might be a little easier
Okay.
for us to understand.
Sure.
So if we could see that as well, just because I know last year I think our mean scale score for biology was maybe a 80, so I'd just like to see if we're doing
Okay.
better than that.
All right.
Did anybody else have any questions about the end of course test or AP tests? And when do we expect the IB results back?
Mr. Kopkis has said that's going to be a little bit of time. He hasn't given me a deadline, but I know he's working on it, so we don't have it yet. Mhm.
Anything else? Okay, I'm sorry.
All right, no, you're great. Okay, the other thing that I had given y'all is I was asked to provide important dates. So what I did is I gave all of you the master calendar, which, and Joey kind of hit on this a little bit without realizing it, is still in the process of being finalized as we're getting staff back and getting some things knocked down. But I wasn't sure how thorough you wanted to be, so I've given you everything. Now, I will say that the class meetings, we're in the process, one of the feedback I've gotten from students, staff, and parents is that the class meetings, those first week of the year, really are not that needed. Maybe for the 9th graders, but 10th, 11th, 12th graders, a lot of parents have said we're just hearing the same thing over and over again. So those will be taken off the calendar, which we haven't done yet, and we're working with guidance to reschedule the 9th grade meeting, but we're gonna move that further into the year. Again, parent feedback was, starting the school year and then have a 9th grade meeting right away, really didn't give us a chance to figure out what questions we had, what we needed to know. So we are working on getting that rescheduled. So this is everything that more or less is planned. There are some question marks because we haven't nailed it down yet, but we're going to work to continue to do that. And all of this goes on our calendar, and all of this will go on the website.
Questions about that?
One question.
Yeah.
So, are there still going to be extended advisements all during the first week of school?
There is.
And so what will be filling that time? Because I know usually it was.
Stellar conversation. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, I interrupted you, Joe.
Well, no, so, I mean, pretty much that, because usually during the extended advisement,
Yeah.
especially for the, I mean, for 9th graders, it makes sense because they're still learning and everything going through their agendas.
Right.
But for sophomores through seniors, we're just, for the most part, even the advisement teachers are kind of aware that we know what's going on, so they just kind of skim through everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is some information that the teachers are going to be required to deliver to you guys, like code of conduct, going through all the stuff they normally do. And I agree with you that it's, for a lot of kids, it's probably like, why are we sitting here? But one of the most important things we do during advisement is make sure that people have the correct schedules, because their schedule's being changed. So if we didn't meet in the morning, it'd be hard to make sure that the kids got their new schedules. So at least for that week, we can get kids who are still enrolling, get them plugged in, get them their information, and make sure if we're doing scheduling changes, that gets to them right from that morning. So I know it's a bit of a pain, and every school I've ever been at, it's like, why are we doing this? but it's really to make sure that we get for a new school year, get those days started right and get everybody kind of off on the right page. And I haven't seen it in action yet. We may decide in the future, hey, we're not gonna do this way anymore, but we'll let it roll for now.
Now, are we still having the class meetings for students in the morning?
Definitely.
Okay, so just the parent meetings we're gonna allow.
Correct, the parent meeting. Class meetings are definitely very important, especially me being new. I wanna meet people, and that's a great way to do it, and they need to know who I am. So great questions, thank you very much.
Let me just interject also.
Sure.
For the council members, if you recall, we did do a parent online survey last year asking about feedback at the start of school activities. And there, I think, was pretty consistent feedback that those evening grade level meetings were not valuable. And there was also a lot of confusion in that people confused that with the, whatever we call it, curriculum night open house, where you go meet the teachers. And so it seemed redundant to come sit in the auditorium and hear a lot of information and then come back for the night where you went around and met the teachers. And particularly if you had more than one child, the information at the grade level nights was pretty much the same for every grade level. So that is based on that survey that we did last year.
Principal appointee of the Governance Council, of course, Mr. Kadish is stepping down. I think this will be his last meeting, so appreciate you, sir. And Portia Shaw, who's the head of our SEC Special Ed Student Department, will be graciously agreed to be my appointee. And just being the few months that I've been here, she's been up here this summer working and just going above and beyond. So thank you. So I really appreciate Ms. Shaw doing this, and she's going to be a great addition. So thank you very much. Discipline matrix. So let me talk a little bit about where this came from. A lot of the feedback that I received over the summer, and we talked about this with the administrative team and with others, is there were a concern about the consistency of discipline in the building. Not so much that it wasn't being done, but was it being done consistently? For example, if Martha Greenway gets in trouble and she goes to administrator, and then another student does the same offense and goes to a different administrator for the same offense, do they get the same consequence? Because we have to be fair. We can't randomly assign discipline consequences. So one of the things the administrative team did last week is we spent many hours going through the discipline code, looking at what we do at Riverwood, looking at what our needs are, what we believe that our priorities are, and we actually listed, if you do this violation of board policy, this is what will happen to you. First, second, third offense. Yesterday, we showed that to a behavior specialist with the district who had some questions and wanted us to change a few things, so that's why I don't have it for today. But it will be made public as soon as we get it finalized. I really wanted to show it to you guys, and it's important for you to understand the Governance Council doesn't have any jurisdiction over school discipline. That is the principle. But I also think it's important to be transparent and to show our community, here's what we're doing to try to keep the school orderly. You can't have any education unless you have order and structure, and that's the first thing we have to do. That's one of my most important jobs, is safety, order, and security. So that will be made public, and I'm sorry we don't have it today, but again, it was just yesterday afternoon that we met with the behavior specialist. Last thing is facility update. There's not a whole lot to report on this. I do know that the Fulton County Board has some decisions to make to kind of drive this project. One of the things that is pretty interesting is as we move forward, there will be an opportunity, I've been told by the district officials, for input. So please be on the lookout for information about how to serve on design committees and things like that as we look at what the new Riverwood facility will look like. And I'm pretty excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be an opportunity to kind of get in on the ground floor and be a part of something that is unique to us. So that is what's coming on facility update, and I would encourage you to pay attention to the board meetings as they come up, because they're going to start, from my understanding, making some decisions that's going to impact this. Whew. Did I do it? 20 minutes, 10 minutes? I guess I did it. So I gave you all a lot. Questions that I can answer, or anything, general concerns, or anything else that I can address or attempt to find an answer for.
Questions, anyone?
7:30.
Dress code?
Yeah, well, really, just, but we're wondering,
We have to do the intro skit, so we have,
Yes.
like, any new rules and regulations and dress code and
Yes, no
basic
shorts.
stuff.
No, I'm just kidding. All right, so you should have gotten a letter with, right, you should have gotten a letter, and all the parents should have gotten a letter with the dress code outlined in it. By and large, it hasn't changed. The only thing that we have talked about administratively is being more consistent, and the staff as well, in enforcing it. So it hasn't changed. And I will tell you that I've been talked down off a few things, like I'm not a fan of tank tops, because then people walk around with 3 fingers and isn't. So I wanted to go to all sleeves. And the administration said, no, these kids are good, they'll do what you expected, so we are gonna allow tank tops. But if you look at what was sent out and what's in the student handbook, it's the same as last year. We really didn't change it, so it's still the same when you guys do your skit, which I'm very excited about. You gonna be in it?
Yeah.
That's awesome, good. So it's basically the same.
Thank you.
You're welcome, great question.
Is there a change in the cell phone usage? I know that it was, when you sent that packet out, it wasn't finalized yet.
Right. Here's what we have, well, I thought the cell phone policy was finalized, but the target policy was not. Maybe I could be wrong. Anyway, so here's what we're doing, I'll just go ahead and explain it. It's basically the same. What we're gonna tell the staff is that you have the discretion if you want students to use a cell phone in your class for instructional purposes. And a lot of our teachers are doing that, and they want the freedom and the flexibility to do that. Here's what we're gonna ask the students, is you can have it at lunch, you can have it during, like I said, lunchtime. What we are gonna ask them to do, and this is not that hard to enforce if we're all consistent about it, is during passing periods, your phone should be out of sight. And the reason for that really goes back to safety and security. I think it's important, especially, and I haven't seen it in action yet, but especially as busy and full as our building is, the kids are aware of what's going on around them. So I think it's a safety issue to have somebody going down the hallway with their headphones in and 1,300 of their closest friends out and about with them. So we're gonna ask the teachers and staff and administration to enforce that, but the teachers do have the flexibility. And what I'm gonna tell the staff, we're gonna do this Friday, is if you say in your classroom, no phones, don't want them out, then that's the rule. If you say, kids, a lot of teachers, they'll just say, just take it out right in the front, put it on your desk, that way I can see it. So there's lots of different ways to handle it, but I think it's important that teachers have the flexibility for that. Yep, thank you for asking.
Regarding that, when you say cell phone at lunch, does that mean, it's a phone, I know, right? Or I'm on Facebook and texting?
Sure.
You're using your phone, you're talking on it?
As long as you're not disrupting other people. I mean, if you're gonna listen to music, you need headphones in.
Yeah, well, previously they were like listening to music and they could text and do Facebook, they weren't making phone calls, they weren't receiving phone calls.
Yeah, so that would be a
So that's what to
change.
clarify.
Oh, that's a change?
That would be a change if they were like, hi, how's it going, what are you doing?
Right.
Yeah, I'm over here, there's one out there, I'm outside, come on.
Okay.
So that's a change.
Well, that's good to know, because I didn't know that.
Okay.
It's just kind of, and on my part, again, I'll probably do this a lot, you have to think about what can you enforce. And if we're in a room with 400 people, are we gonna enforce what you're texting and you're talking, so, you know, it just
It was
gets
easy to
be-
see people with phones in their head versus
Mhm.
right here.
Okay. We'll see how it works. I've never known it to be an issue, but thanks for pointing it out. I didn't realize it was different.
Regarding the dress code, we did have a problem with the tank tops and the blue sleeves, and we would, as leadership, prefer sleeves. Martha's outfit is very appropriate, but we find that many of them might want to wear less,
Uh-huh.
and it gets to be tricky. So
Okay.
sleeves is made a little easier. We've gone back and forth over it over time. I think it depends on the styles and generation, but
Right.
it's been a challenge.
Okay. All right, well, we're meeting actually today, so we can talk about it.
And I'm sorry, I need to go back to the AP scores.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm confused.
Okay. Is my math wrong? Don't call me on
Well, I'm not sure what happened here. So like, if you look at music theory, 1 out of 11 is not 90% passing.
that. No, it's, oh, you're right, it's not. So my math is wrong.
Well, and then the next one, it would be 100%, because you had everybody scored a 3, a 2, or 1.
Correct. So the report is right, my math is wrong. That's what you're saying.
Well, that's, yeah, but it
Mhm.
also, it looks like they're all inconsistent.
Okay.
Like 6 out of 24 is not 90, 8 out of 24 is not 92%. I'm just
It's
not
not?
sure
Okay.
what happened.
I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe if we could get that again. Because it was supposed to be the percent 3, 4, or 5 out of the 10,
Correct.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right.
So if we could get that, that would be helpful.
Sure.
Because I don't think any of these actually seem.
That's why I was a social studies teacher.
Yeah. Okay,
All right. All right, well, that's all I've got.
All right, anything else for Dr. Shaw? Okay, so we've already discussed the end of course test and also the AP test. If we could ask Mr. Blackwell to give us a strategic plan update.
Sure. while I talk, I'm gonna have you take 3 things that I'm just gonna quickly overview with you in a minute. These are the advanced ed surveys that we did in May. One reflective of the parents who took it, one of staff, and one of students. And I'll, kind of let you browse a little bit while I talk just about an update on the plan, and then I'll go over some highlights. But I know you wanted this because it is a part of what we're supposed to consider in our strategic plan. So take one of each, there are 3, and feel free to look while I'm kind of giving you an update, and then in a second we'll hit some highlights. And they all look the same, sorry.
Mr. Black, is there enough for the crowd to have one?
Yeah,
Or
there are
legally, can the
certainly,
crowd have one?
there certainly are. There are 25, so I think you can have one.
Okay.
Joey, would you mind when it gets to you?
Thanks.
Okay. So an update basically on where we are with strategic plan. I guess we'll start with where we need to be as governance council in about a month's time. But in September, Dr. Shaw and Martha, I'm sure, will work on scheduling a meeting for the governance council where it may not be the sole purpose, but where a large part of the purpose of that day will be to review the strategic plan that we have created and to offer recommendations and to ultimately approve that plan. So that's upcoming in about a month. I don't know the exact date, but we'll choose a September date where we can spend a good bit of time doing that. So leading up to that, you all know that we have gone through the first couple of parts of the strategic plan, including the environmental scan, and I showed you the data and outcomes from that, and the organizational assessment, and I showed you the data and outcomes from that. So where we are right now, in fact today, leadership team, school leadership team, will spend a part of its morning meeting reflecting on what are called the long-term outcomes that the administrative leadership team have pieced together after looking at some of this data. So long-term outcomes, put in another way, are kind of our big overarching, these are the 3 to 5 things that we are going to focus on for the next 3 years, which is how long the strategic plan lasts. So we'll be looking at those this morning and talking all the way down through objectives that go with each of those long-term outcomes, and ultimately getting their input on initiatives that we need to continue doing, or that we need to put into place, or possibly initiatives that we've been doing in the past that aren't really fruitful to our efforts in the future. So I hope that's not a too long-winded way of saying we're wrapping up our parts with the school leadership team to get down to the initiative level, talking about which steps we're going to take in various departments to support some of our long-term outcomes. And you'll get to see all of that in September. Is that good enough update? Did I leave anything out?
Was there, out of all 3 surveys, was there anything that just glared out at you that you didn't expect? Or was it all pretty much?
I'll hit some highlights, Claire. That,
Just a couple that.
yeah.
Like, oh, really? Okay.
I'll hit a few highlights, and what you think is interesting might be different than what I think is interesting. Really, on first blush, I was kind of, I guess I was surprised that there was so much average or just below average. You can see the best example really is the staff survey, but a lot of the average scores end up being in a low 3 area or a high 2, and so as a broad comment, I was a little bit surprised that there weren't some more real positive, or in the same vein, real low responses. But then to get more specific, here are the things that I kind of thought were interesting, and I'll just walk you through a couple and then feel free to ask me questions. The staff survey first. A couple of the takeaways that I found a little bit more on the negative side. included numbers 7, 10, and 12. So 7 speaks to the governing body or the school board maintaining a distinction between roles and responsibilities and those of the leadership. And many of these actually are comments on, the school leadership as well, which were not overwhelmingly positive. Number 10 is an example. Our school's leaders hold themselves accountable for student learning. So definitely some strong feedback in those areas. Gives us a lot of food for thought. Other takeaways were there was not a real strong response on the idea that each student would have at least one strong faculty member who knows him or her intimately. I thought that was an interesting response from our faculty, where they're indicating that they don't know that every single student has a real strong connection with at least one faculty member.
What number was that, Mr. Blackwell?
One moment.
I'm sorry.
Is that 18?
I thought I highlighted it, but I may not have. 28. In our school, a formal structure exists so that each student is well known by at least one adult advocate in the school who supports that student's educational experience. Again, it's not a terribly low response, but it is below an average, an average of 3. I thought that was interesting.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, sure.
What do we do as a school to make that number larger? I mean, why did we think that there was a possibility that that number even could be any larger?
Well, maybe this is idealistic of me, but I would hope that there's lots of possibility that almost every child and faculty member could say, even if not for all of his or her teachers or counselors or administrators, but I wish that, we could ask, every student, hey, who's really in your corner here at Riverwood? And then they would say, Dr. Square, Dr. Shaw.
That would be the question.
How do
We have
we
the
get there?
systems in place, yeah, to have Dr. Shaw mentor, Johnny.
We don't.
Okay, so then
And so
that's why
there's-
the number is
right.
low. There's nothing there.
And
what
so
we
those
need
are
to
things
do-
for us to consider,
Right.
Do we need to think about more formal mentorships with some of our faculty members? Do we need to think about student mentorships? Because that might help some
Right.
students.
But then the question would be different. And that actually is a really good point, and it's a good thing for us to actually start focusing toward, because it would be truly wonderful for each kid to feel as if they had at least one adult in their corner.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting question and response. A couple of other highlights, and then I'll let you just choose your own that you find interesting. 37, our school provides instructional time and resources to support our school's goals and priorities. Not a terribly strong response, nor is 38. Again, another materials and resources comment. Neither is 42. Again, it's another resources and materials comment about technology. So there were some pretty strong responses about, the resources in general that we are or are not providing, be it time or scheduling or technology or and then I also really liked that there were some strong comments from the teachers even on data. While it's not great that they're recognizing that we don't have really good systems in place, I am happy that they were honest about it. So 49, our school has a systematic process for collecting, analyzing, and using data. Or 51, our school uses data to monitor student readiness and success at the next level. Yeah, 50 as well, yeah. So, again, none of these are terrible responses. I mean, they're just below, you know, an average range, but I did think they were interesting, and you probably could find some more that you think are interesting even that aren't at the just below average range. I would point out though, some also strong ones.
Can I just ask a question, just since I wasn't here? If I'm reading this right, it says 46 people took the survey. Was it made available to everybody? Was it emailed out a link? Is that how it was done? Okay.
Probably also, you know, a little bit of commentary as well on how people were feeling when this survey was out. There were some strong points, and I think we would be, you know, it would be poor just to focus on what's not so great in here. But number one, and this was an across-the-board strong response, even in the parent and student surveys. It's basically a question about our purpose statement and, you know, being focused on student success. Across the board, that was a strong response. And what I took as strong was approaching a bit more of a, what category is it? Agree range. So agree would have been in the 4 range. So, you know, these are approaching that. So that was a great one. So too was number 20. And again, this was a pretty across the board strong response from parents and students. And it speaks to teachers in the school using processes to inform kids about learning expectations. Across the board, it was a strong response that kids felt like they understood expectations for learning and that parents felt like expectations for learning were pretty clear. I think the last 2 that I'll point out here in the staff part are 36, our school provides qualified staff members to support student learning. It was one of the strongest responses. And 44, our school provides opportunities for students to participate in activities that interest them. I find the wording of that one interesting because while they're, and this is probably a little bit of my personal opinion, you know, I think that there's a difference between opportunity to participate in and then actual student participation consistently. The question didn't address that, it just addressed that there is an opportunity for them to participate in many things if they choose. So that's highlights from staff. I'll kind of let you browse. I could go through all the highlights and the drawbacks from the others, but I did it in the same way. So if you went through and looked at, you know, the ones that are just below the average range, those would have been the ones that I picked out as, you know, things for us to consider, and strong responses were more toward the 4 range. Does anyone have questions or comments?
I just ask once again, I think, if I'm correct, these were done system-wide.
Mm-hmm.
So would it be possible to see sort of how what the system average looks like? Particularly, maybe find the ones that we are concerned about and then see what the system average looks like. Some of these tend to be higher or lower naturally. It would just be interesting to know.
I don't know if
maybe
we'll,
compared to other high schools.
yeah. I don't know if we will, but I think it's a good point. If we have access to them, that it would be nice to see if across the board, you know, there are kind of low scores on certain questions, and so it's not as much of a
Is it a county problem, or is it,
Right.
I mean, not that then we wouldn't care about it, but I just think that would be interesting to know if it's available.
And I would point out, only because I have fewer comments about the parent and the parent survey, but things that I picked out as clear kind of indicators for need in that one are around communication and differentiation of instruction. If you just looked at 13 through 16 in the parent survey, it kind of gives you a highlight of all of those things in there. 13 says, all of my child's teachers meet his or her learning needs by individualizing instruction. And then 14, 15, and 16 are largely, you know, about communication, either about grades or about their progress. But strong things from the parent survey included, again, that purpose and the high expectations, you know, that are clear to students. So anyway, I
Would
won't
it,
drone on
one
forever.
more question, would it be possible to aggregate these 3 survey averages into one piece of paper where the questions are common? to see the different perceptions of the staff versus the students. And it would be interesting to see the gaps, I guess, between what the staff perceives and the students perceive, and then where it's critical, it might be helpful to focus on this.
We can work on that.
And it's just a matter of pulling the averages, not all of them.
Oh, and just so you know, I didn't disclude all of the dirty stuff at the end. You probably see that it's some page of 30, so don't feel like I left out all the stuff I didn't want you to see. The last pages are bar graphs that are representations of the average. Although some of it was dirty and I just left that out. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you for sharing this. I think I'd ask that everybody look through this in preparation for our strategic planning discussion, as well as kind of reflecting on this in course.
I didn't give you the bar graphs, I just wanted you to know why there weren't the
Why the
rest of the
pages were
30
missing.
pages.
No.
Are there other questions about this or the strategic planning process?
I have a question. With the strategic planning, it looks like is it like a governance thing that we're working on? Or, I mean, is that from the district saying that our governance board has to work on the strategic planning together? Is that from the district? Okay.
Yes, as part of the charter system, we are required to first establish a strategic plan, and most of the legwork on that and recommendations would be coming through the leadership team. But then this council needs to adopt it. And then there'll be a step where we will have an opportunity. There are certain waivers that were in our current conversion charter. There would be an opportunity for us to request continuation or additional waivers based on that strategic plan. So that's a conversation that we need to have.
So you said the legwork will fall on the leadership team, and then the governance board will work to adopt, they'll review and choose to adopt.
That's my understanding of the, I mean, I don't think it's appropriate or feasible for us to do the kind of analysis and so forth that the leadership team will do. So they will be recommending to us where they think the focus should be and what kinds of initiatives they think would be in place. But we are going to need, it's a good segue, because we are going to need more time than we would be able to allot in a meeting like this. And so actually our next agenda item is to try to find a date where we can have an additional meeting in addition to our regularly scheduled meeting for us to get that input and make some decisions. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Other questions about it?
Just one, and I'm not sure how you get this without it being a lengthy process, but as a layperson, it's very confusing what the state expectations are versus the county expectations of a high school versus what we as a high school want to do maybe differently than that. The Common Core, the differentiated learning, everything else, and not that we're charged with doing curriculum, but as we look at what do we want Riverwood to be, uniquely or not, if there's any way to help us understand that as we review the strategic plan. Because I think it's got to be in context too.
Right.
What is the expectation? What are we trying to achieve here?
Right.
What is required versus not? What is?
Yeah, and so let me just say that I believe a lot of that is in flux right now as far as what the school system is actually going to allow to be waived and what they are not. But there is a facilitator assigned to our school that's supposed to be able to kind of help us navigate that. So maybe it would be appropriate to see if she can come to our retreat date, whatever day we set for that.
Sure.
To sort of run things up the flagpole and say, yeah, that requires a waiver from state law, but but we'll support you, or no, you can't decide, you're not gonna give the end of forecast anymore. Where are those lines, right?
I think that'd be helpful, because for us to do the work and leave and have all these recommendations and they get there and say, no, it's really not productive, so.
That's
that'd be great.
a question that all of the governance councils are asking right now.
No, I was just going to say, to simplify it a little bit, I mean, the district has outlined 3 important goals regarding graduation rate, college and career readiness. That will be reflected in our outcomes. It has to be. One of the things we also have to determine is, based on this data and other data, what is it as a school? You know, I don't believe that you can do everything in 1 year. I don't believe you can do everything in 2 years. But we have to decide as a governance council, as a leadership team, with the students' input, here's the most important things. And again, that's what I spent a lot of my summer doing. And a lot of what's in these surveys does support what people have told me over the summer. So, you know, we have to prioritize. You're not gonna do it all. And sometimes there are things that come down and you say, you know, and that's what I think Martha's talking about, you have the freedom to say, for our priority for our kids right now, we have to do X, Y, Z, and here's how we're gonna get there. So, it does get confusing and you get inundated, so you just have to kind of take a step back sometime and see the forest through the trees and say, here's what our kids need for them to be successful right now for our school. Again, knowing that there are 3 very specific goals that the superintendent and the district got for.
I'm glad that Mr. Blackwell did highlight those scores a little bit lower, because now there's actual data to capture some of the perceptions that I just feel amongst, you know, staff and
Right.
teachers. So I'm glad that those will be, you know, spotlights and highlights for, you know, next year.
Okay, so why don't we move then to that next item, which I'd like to try to do this today if possible. If not, we can send out a little electronic poll to try to find a date. But I am thinking we would need at least 2 hours on this topic. Dr. Shaw, what are you thinking in terms of?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think
2
2
hours, it would be 2 hours seem about right for a conversation with the governance council? Is that long enough? 3 hours?
I think it's a, ooh.
2?
Let's start with 2, and not that 3 wouldn't be wonderful,
Yeah.
but 2 might be a good start.
So our regular meeting is September 10th. So if we looked at the week of the 23rd, is that good timing from your standpoint in terms of the process, September 23rd? Or would you want to do it the week before, the week of the 16th?
I don't really remember which day we're supposed, what our next due date is in September. I would say the week of the 23rd would be fine, I'm sure.
Well, the other thing is that's the end of the first 6 weeks, isn't it? So we'd actually have some student grade data to look at too.
Mhm.
Well, there is something due. Is it the?
I feel like it's the 30th.
I do too.
Yeah.
As long as it's not the 15th. How does
No, it's the
everybody look-
15th of this month, so I think it's the 30th of
Okay,
next.
how does everybody look for September 24th?
What time?
To extend our morning.
No, I'm thinking maybe 4 to 6 to get 2 hours. So 4 to 6 on September 24th. I know you all don't know what you have going on after school right now, but.
I mean, I know I've got a conflict, but
You do?
I do.
Okay, how about the 25th?
I don't on the 25th.
Pardon?
I don't on the 25th.
You are available on the 25th. That's a Wednesday.
I'm not quite sure of my schedule yet. I'm in school, so sometimes I have courses and that hasn't been provided for me yet.
Okay.
So,
Are you on the leadership team?
yes.
Okay. So in that instance, if you had to miss, at least we would know we had gotten your input through the leadership team.
Okay.
So, do we want to hold that date for now? 25th from 4 to 6?
Can I ask, Mr. Blackwell, the writing test is that day, that shouldn't, I mean, can we still be done with what we need to do and be here by 4? I don't think it should matter, it's mostly in the morning anyway, right?
It should be okay.
Excellent. I will send out an invite.
And you said this meeting would be to review the student data.
No, it would be to review all the recommendations about the strategic plan from the leadership team and basically confirm the work to that point. And I think there'll be more work to do after that, but get that overall direction.
4 to 6.
4 to 6. And we'll send out a more specific agenda in advance, so everybody's really clear on what we're doing during that time. That's a good point. Okay. Next item, officer nominating committee recommendations. So my term expired on June 30th, as did Donna Davis as secretary. So we do need to vote for a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary slash parliamentarian to serve through June 30, 2014. So I'm going to turn that over to Joel and Deborah.
The conversation that we're working on is the most important positions are chair and secretary, because ideally, the vice chair would step in only if the chair was absent. The chair would do all the actual work as far as setting the agenda and working with Dr. Shaw and stuff like that, so the position for vice chair wouldn't have to be as involved. And also, our vice chair is not a second-year step-up, step as well.
So on that line, what we've asked is for Martha to come back as the president of the chair of the governance committee. And I will, and everyone knows that I'm out of town a lot, but I will step up and be the vice chair. The only caveat to that is Martha has to promise to never be gone at 7 o'clock. She can be gone at any 4 o'clock, but just not 7. I'm an hour away. And Pam has stepped up to say that she will be interested in filling the secretary position. So those will be the nominating, or the people that we will be voting on. Now, will Susan be here to scribe me?
Today's a one-shot deal. So
Okay, I was actually hoping.
But there is a commitment that there will be a staff person to support the
Okay.
actual minute taking. So the role of the secretary is really to review those and then get them out to the council.
Okay. Sure would be great if Susan would like to continue that role. Saying all that, what's the appropriate form? Do we vote today? Do we send something out?
We do need to vote today. We did have this on our last agenda as well, and I think, we certainly kind of alluded to what your recommendation is. I would just ask, we can vote on the nominees as a slate, or we can vote on them one at a time. Does anybody have a preference? How would you like to proceed? Okay. So I guess you want to put that in the form of a motion?
Okay. The motion is to have everyone vote on the slate of Martha Greenway as chair, Deborah Davis as vice chair, and Pam Jones as secretary.
Second.
Pam first. Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, off we go. So,
And thank you, Martha, for standing up and being willing to do this again. I know it wasn't an easy year. I'm anticipating that this year will be a lot easier. We had some tough things we had to go through this past year, and you handled them with grace. And as a team, we really appreciate that, and we're glad to have you back.
thank you. Well, I will do my best not to be on at 7 in the morning.
Thank you.
And appreciate everybody's support. As I said, I'm certainly willing to give up the seat, but if it's your will for me to continue, I'll do it. All right, so moving right along. Claire sent out a report, which she's also provided a copy of. So somewhere in your papers in front of you, you should have
Extra in front of
the Governance Council Communication Committee. This actually was on our agenda in June, but we didn't get a chance to discuss it because Claire was on vacation. So I will turn this over to you. This is really for our information and input. Doesn't require a vote.
So, just informationally, a couple of things. The most important thing is that we're working with all the, the principal, the staff, the booster clubs, PPSA and foundation, and just trying to get as much information out there that we think people need. And these are the various ways of doing it and why it's important under the critical stakeholders. I mean, you can see why information would be important and to whom it goes. a couple of things that people have suggested that we might also think about is just to make sure that we get public meetings out there and then have a headline of, you know, the state of the school. I got Lynn Miller is really in charge because she's the expert. She is a past parent here and has really worked very hard in getting information out. Unfortunately, as we all know, the website has been down much of the summer, so as that gears back up and she gets trained on it and is allowed to get on there, the website will continually change and be updated. She was able to work this summer on removing the old stories, creating new staff directory, and updating the band section according to our new teacher. And she's also working with Beck Cox right here, who's helping with the layout of the homepage of the website. And we're also using Facebook and Twitter. And Marla Shaven is taking over the PR manager for Riverwood. It was Ann Boatwright in the past who did a fabulous job. So Marla will also be working with Lynn, in especially regards to the Facebook page. Let's see what else. Lots of things were highlighted this summer, you know, anywhere from students being drafted by Major League Baseball to students' trips to Japan. We have a very good relationship with the Sandy Springs Patch, so there are clicks to those, or links to that website, as well as neighborhood papers, TV stations. We gave a little bit of a facelift to the newsletter, you know, calling it the Raider Report instead of just something that's flat like a newsletter. Because communication's ever evolving, that all the pages will be ever evolving, and any input or suggestions or, hey, did you miss this or did you get that? That can either come to me or to Lynn Miller. Does anybody have any questions regarding, you know, this kind of overall platform, which I worked with the PTSA in helping develop that?
On the e-news, is the staff automatically included in there?
I believe so.
Okay. Because if we send any out in the summer, I haven't gotten any.
Okay.
Yeah.
Make sure that.
In the past, whenever there's been an e-news, usually parents will ask me about stuff, I don't know.
Oh, okay, so in the past they haven't.
Yes, whenever our messenger thing might be a simple click to add teachers to it.
Okay, thank you.
And staff.
So is it the intent that that e-newsletter include all organizations?
Yes. Yes, so, you're right, sorry, Martha. The major push for the Raider Report is that it does include the booster clubs and the foundation and the PTSA, and
Governance council.
and governance council and principal and staff, and that it's all encompassing, so people don't have to go to 5 different websites to see the 5 different interests of their child or children. So it's just a one-stop shop, and
Do you know what the deadline is on that?
you know, that's still kind of evolving. We talked about that perhaps the summer would be a monthly, and now perhaps we may go to a weekly, so that the deadline, you know, if we put it out on a Wednesday or Thursday, the deadline may be the previous Friday. We don't have that finalized yet. I know that-
And Lynn Miller's doing that too?
Yes.
Okay.
And the idea was to get, you know, yes, you know, some people prefer Facebook, some people prefer Twitter. You know, I'm still old school. I like things passed to me, and that's what I'm used to. So that's why we think that it's important to go ahead and push the newsletter instead of waiting for people to go on Facebook to see something.
You gonna say something? No, okay. So, one additional concern that I will just raise, which I had raised before. we do not have, I believe, up-to-date email addresses attached to all of our students.
The PTSA is working on that, and I will get with Katie Arney, just make sure that they're following up with that. I think they were going to work on that at orientation and get, you know, and try to get those.
So the only thing I'll comment on that is, while that may be an effective way to get the email addresses, the administration actually has to put the email addresses into the student information system. And so, I don't know, my understanding is there's been somewhat of an issue with that in the past. But of course, my concern is that if there were emergency situations that needed to be distributed and we don't have contact information, it could be really problematic. And I know last year there was a lot of confusion around graduation because so much up until a point was going out solely by email, and some of the students whose parents don't access email were really kind of in the dark as far as what was happening. I know Ms. Gonzalez did a great job trying to communicate to the Hispanic population, but if email is going to be our primary interface with our parents, then I think we need to really make it a priority, not just on the PTSA side, but also on the administration side, to make sure we have an accurate email address for all of our parents, not just those who.
I know Kate had mentioned having orientation an emergency card that was separate from
And-
other
And
information.
while I appreciate that, that's the school's responsibility to have the emergency cards updated. That's not a PTSA responsibility.
Can I just add a comment? I've met with Jillian on orientation, some stuff, and I don't know what the final outcome of it was, but I've been puzzled since I've been in high school that the county does not require updated parent information for high school students, where they absolutely do. I mean, at middle school, Ridgeview, part of your orientation sign-up and registration process is filling out the forms and updating parent contact
And that is
information.
supposed to be done at the
So
high school
I don't know
level.
why it's not being done here, but it should be a requirement of registration. And we talked about it's easy to do for ninth grade, because this year, ninth grade parents are going to advisement, and they can fill it out there. We talked about having that happen the first week of advisement for 10th, 11th, and 12th. But it's gonna be hard for the PTSA to require it. But the school should require it. It should be required by the county to have all
I
that.
believe it
Are you speaking of student information?
Parent contact, student contact information, yes.
Right.
is. Phone number, email address.
Yeah, I mean, I was under the impression that we get that information.
It's not updated once you're enrolled.
Oh, okay.
High
So
school,
that's
yeah.
what you mean, just
Yeah.
regularly updated.
In the 4 years that I've been here, unlike every other feeder school, annually when you come in and you get all those things you have to sign, you know, the student code of conduct and everything, there's a little colored index card where you have to, again, give your address, your phone number, your email address.
Well, I think with Fulton Connect coming, that may change or something. It could be possible that there may be a required update. Because I know just with IEPs, I've learned in the training, like our IEPs, we have a new program that's connected to Fulton Connect. And they've told us that we're not responsible for updating that information, that our, the data clerk, the school, the data clerk will be responsible for updating parent information into Fulton Connect. So there may be some kind of connection with requirements for updating student information with the implementation of the new Fulton Connect system.
Can I interject? I thought, Pam, this is where you're going with this, is we did talk about our plan during orientation, Ready to Rally, to get that information through a variety of means, to have possibly some computer stations where parents can sign up, or handwritten cards. And then the other thing that has been used successfully is very simply a Google Doc that is emailed out. Parents enter their information. You have to have a variety of different means, even if it is as simple as a piece of paper where they write it out. So, yeah, I agree with you. It's been brought to my attention that we don't have everything we should, so we're gonna work on that. We talked about some things with Jillian, with orientation, and getting that done. And then making sure it's updated in the system, which I think we were talking about.
Yeah, it needs to be in the student information system.
Right.
And it needs to be updated annually.
I agree.
So if we can just make sure that's happening, then the communication plan will be effective. But if that's not right, then the communications plan is missing one.
So
Right.
is it something that happens here at Riverwood or downtown?
You mean collecting the information
Well,
or updating?
update, you know.
That's us.
Okay,
That's us.
okay, it is
That's us.
us.
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
it is. It is. Do you know about how many people are on or get this Facebook, Twitter updates? Do you know how many?
No, the difference, I don't, but that would be.
It's very little. I've looked at the numbers and it's minuscule compared to the number. When you look at the followers, it's very, very low.
Okay.
The percentage who receive the emails is low, and that was a huge concern, you know, when we first started this, was how, you know, and how and the why, you know, don't we have these email addresses for everyone? And, you know, understanding that, sure, there are still some people who don't have email access today, and, you know, I've talked with Ms. Gonzalez about that and how we can still distribute, especially to us from the community. So it's, you know, we're still trying to work on that.
Claire?
Thanks for this work.
One thing that I would just even personally be curious about in terms of feedback from your committee is, you know, when we do call outs from the school using the school messenger, so you can do an email or you can do a phone call or a text or all of them, the statistics that you get back from that are really quite interesting. Most people by end of year have blocked us as a sender of texts and emails. So, especially from your committee standpoint, you know, as you talk with the community, it makes it difficult for us to be effective communicators when people don't take our communication. So I don't know if you have conversations about that, or if you ever can give the governance feedback about, do people want fewer of this type? Would they rather see this communicated through Facebook and this through email?
Well, I think
That kind of
mostly
thing would be
what we're
interesting.
talking about is emergencies or something that parents really need to know that day,
Mhm.
you know, or the following day. And I would think it's still important to have that. Are you saying that they once were not blocked and now they blocked them since, or they
Mhm.
never let Riverwood on to begin with?
They once were not blocked, and now, you know, throughout the year, texts especially, and I understand because not all people have, you know, unlimited, but, you know, it's just every time more and more, the percentage of people who block our number, whatever the number is.
But
that
is that
it's
refreshed
from.
every year? Because they could be parents who moved on.
I'm not sure.
See, that's probably, if you look at the data, it's probably parents that you never took off your list.
Well, maybe, but it's a
I
lot.
mean,
So
that's
anyway,
what-
it's just interesting, you know, that kind of feedback, I would think from your committee is really valuable
Right.
to the school and the council.
Absolutely, yeah.
It would be, and I would just say on that note, perhaps at the beginning of the year, making sure parents know the purpose of those messages. I will confess that my husband has hung up on quite a few, because I'll catch him and I'll say, who was that? And he'll say, oh, that was some recording. And I'll say, well, who was it from? Well, it was from the school. And I was like, no, we have to listen to them. And because it comes on as that recording, if you're not educated that there's this system that comes out, the first line does sound like a robocall. So maybe just educating people that, you know, those tell you if school's canceled or if there's an upcoming event that affects your child. I think that might help for people.
You know, but one point Opie made that I think does warrant more consideration is types of information and types of outlets. Like
Mhm.
Facebook is a great for the social stuff and the sports and things like that. And then maybe the newsletter or the frequent calls is just where is the most appropriate place for the type of communication. Because sometimes when we core dump everything into a newsletter or core dump everything into an email, nobody reads it because it's too long or too much. So I
That's
don't
why we're trying to make it more concise. You know, if there's something going on with musical
Right.
theater, you can click on that and read further. So we'd like to keep it, you know, we'd like to minimize it
Okay.
so that it is an easier and more appealing read than, you know, to have to sit through
Right.
1,000 different articles.
Great.
And that's on the website. That's the main source is what we're focusing on, is the website.
So a couple of requests I heard. One is to make sure that the leaders of the various organizations know the due date for the weekly newsletter. Because I think that that's important. And then also, to make sure that the parent contact information is up to date, whatever effort we need to make to do that. I do have one question. This indicates that the progress reports are mailed through regular mail, and I've only gotten report cards through regular mail. So I think that is not correct, that the progress reports, you get if you sign up on Parent Connect, you get an email link. If you don't sign up on Parent Connect, you don't get anything, right? No?
We print them and give them to the student, yes.
Yeah, the kids always get a printed hard copy and advisement. Now, whether that makes it home, of course, is another story. I don't know if you, I'm not as familiar with Home Access Center, but I would hope you wouldn't have to sign up. You mean just sign up for Home Access Center?
It doesn't matter. I don't want to make a, but it's not coming home to the parent from the school. So I just think that needs to be clear to people that if they want to see that, they need to either ask their child or go into Home Access Center and look at it. All right, anything else on communications? Thank you, Clara. I think this is great work. Is the committee going to continue to meet?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
You know, student input is obviously vital. You know, what are the kids looking at? What do they think is important? So I do that.
One thing is the online grade book is often down when we're getting our grades back. So I bring my hard copy of my progress report to my parents because they asked for it. But that's a problem with my mom. She likes to keep updated on my grades, and it's a lot of the time is down.
You're talking about the home access?
Yeah. IB students get emails, even if the system is down, they know their grades. And I mean, that would be helpful to, you know, maybe get an email if you want to. I don't know if there's a way for students to sign up for themselves, but.
Are you talking about the entire student population or just the IB students?
I think anybody. I think it's unfair that just the IB kids
Right.
get the email.
That's
And then the
something
other
that the
thing
county
would be
need to do.
maybe an advisement the first week of school, make sure the students are liking the Riverwood Facebook page, so at least the students are getting updates that they can pass on to their parents, even if it's just about, you know, school being canceled for weather or.
Maybe they could be allowed to get their phones out
Yeah,
during the
right.
extended advisement versions of it.
And sign up for the Facebook page then.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
That is a
That
really
was
good idea.
over
Yeah, there's only 2,000 now, I just checked, only 2,000 likes.
That would be an
And
excellent.
I'm sure some of those are graduating kids.
Yeah, and parents and, yeah.
When you say IB email, do you mean from Home Access Center?
That's
pretty sure it
well,
is.
Lynn helps, and then we have.
Is that just the automated, I mean,
The
the
email,
general
the Gmail.
email?
I think it is, but
I'm sure caucus would know more about it.
yeah, I'm sure Mr. Hawkins would, but I know that when the system is down, I have friends who are IB diploma, they can see their grades,
Sure.
and I can't.
You're exactly right. As a matter of fact, I think it was probably down more than half of the year. Martha, you probably experienced that a little bit with your child. The only way we got Devin's information was because she was an IB student. That's a really good.
And then when it's
It's down
down,
a big
it's down
chunk
for a
second
while.
semester early and second semester. It's down.
Or it's not being
It's
updated.
down.
So are the
All
IB
the-
students getting all their grades from one email or all the teachers? His or hers?
I'm sure if they're getting their grade, it's not just per class, I'm
Yeah,
sure
I
it's
think it's-
one cumulative.
Every
report.
time they input a grade, they get.
Okay, so let me just suggest this. I think this is an administrative issue. If it has to do with communicating grades, I don't think it's really a governance council communication role. So could we just ask that the administration check on that? There's nothing that the school can do if home access is down. So I think we need to acknowledge that that's a system problem. But the one thing I will also add to that is that I've been very frustrated at the number of teachers that don't enter grades at all after a certain point. So, for example, there will be a end of semester project due that students spend a lot of time working on, and that grade never gets in home access and never gets communicated. So there's a number of issues I've experienced where those kind of things that are at the end of the semester, they don't ever get entered, and all of a sudden there's a final grade. So I think also just requesting that the administration look at the use of Home Access Center, period, to record grades in a timely way, and then making sure that students have access to that. So
Not to belabor the point, the expectation has been clearly communicated to the staff, grade books have to be updated weekly. I just, as a parent myself, I think it's brutally unfair that you have an 84 one day and you go in 2 days later and it's a 68. So
Trust me.
Absolutely.
that is just part of doing our job and communicating it for our
Exactly.
customers. So,
Thank you.
Or, okay.
Can I ask one more question on the communication? Number 2 on your sheet here, and maybe I've missed this somewhere before, but what are the communication guidelines, ground rules, civic engagement? Can you maybe clarify the expectation if, what that means?
As far as the governance council is concerned, that's what we had talked about, and I know there are minutes, I don't know all of them, but, you know, if people have a question about that, they know the minutes on the website. It just lists, you know, the minutes that they're allowed to talk or that they have before, and, you know, things of the nature where Martha had the board and we were writing down different forms of etiquette and so forth.
But that's just for this body, not for all of Riverwood?
Correct.
Okay.
I do think the PTSA was working on something similar, but the ones we established were for us and they haven't posted on the website.
Okay. I just thought that meant for all of Riverwood, so.
Dr. Shaw, you said that all the teachers will be required to update their books each week, and I'm assuming that means like up-to-date current, where their statuses are now. If that falls behind, if that doesn't happen, what recourse or just how do the parents handle that situation? And how do you get the word out that that's going to happen this year? Because that students and parents have issues with that across the board, not just in one particular department. And that would be huge when we're talking to the parents for the, I just got it. My brain is so today.
that's all right.
When
I
you
tried to
have
get
the,
fast.
yeah, and then we had a 7 o'clock meeting. So, but when we're having the introductory meeting with the parents,
Sure.
that's just huge. And
Well,
that's
I-
extreme frustration.
That's
for
good to know. I
parents.
didn't realize that.
Oh my gosh, that is very, very huge. So if you can also give them some guidelines, them meeting me too, as to if that happens and
Okay.
falls behind, what do we do, what's the recourse,
Right.
you know? Because often emailing teachers or, and forgive me, I'm sure all of the ones that are in here are wonderful, but emailing the teachers or getting them to respond and that type of thing is also slow incoming too, if oftentimes they don't upgrade their.
Okay. Thank you. And I will definitely, I didn't realize that was a hot button, but I will publicize how we're handling it.
It's a very high priority.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for letting me know.
One thing that's in place is that as department chairs, we have asked that our teachers submit our grades to us.
Is that new for this year?
No, we've done.
But that's what I'm saying, because last year and the year before, those things just didn't happen.
And we can also educate parents that when we have a grade that's only representing one category, for example, if I only give them one test, the grade could drop significantly.
Sure.
Or one multiple assessment or what have you, until we have other students. There is a drop. Up and down.
But yeah, we see the percentages on the weekly home.
Right, with
Yeah.
the first week, so several 90s, I'm doing a lot of review work, and then the first unit of new material, and it dropped from 90 to maybe 82. How could this happen? He's Chili's an A student. But we've only
I think
got
we'd be
one
fine
test
if it
on
dropped
it.
90 to 82. If it drops 90 to 60, you go, oh my gosh.
Well, some of us would be happy with 90 to 82. So, yeah, no.
Just temporary.
Yeah.
It's, I don't want to belabor it.
Yes, I
My
know that.
only point was, what will be the recourse, what will happen? Because in some areas last year, and I'm sure, and I won't call any particular areas, but some areas got pretty heated because people didn't get information for over a month and a half. And at that point in time, it's really very difficult to have that child try to recover from that. If the parents or the child had no idea, they were in trouble.
Agreed. Okay.
And just a side note on that, home access is great, but that's an after-the-fact thing. And
Yeah.
one of the goals I hope we come out with this year is back to that, what Opie said about somebody personally understanding this child's in trouble and the parent know it before it's too late to recover.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we get there, because I know these are high school students and they've got to be responsible for their learning,
But even if home access was updated, I agree with you.
It would, but,
Yeah.
but I would,
Yeah.
if my child is struggling, I
Yeah.
would like to hear it from a teacher
Yeah.
versus me see it online,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
at some point. That's an ideal world, I know,
But
but,
those might be processes we could discuss as part of our strategic plan.
Right.
As far as what we would do for our school.
And Pam makes a really good point though, because they are in high school. And at some point in time, they've gotta take that responsibility.
They do.
In doing that, because when they go to college, we're just not gonna be there.
Right, no,
And
but-
it just might need to be, and maybe that's a release process. Maybe it's in the 9th grade, you get this, in 10th grade, you get this, and as you get older and older, you know, maybe in this, well, I don't know. As we talk about it, strategic, maybe it's something we
Just
can,
kind of hold that. I
we
think
can visit.
the strategies around student success and some things that would be helpful, important to bring up then. Okay, anything else on communications?
No, it was excellent.
Yeah, thank you so much, Claire. This looks like a great.
Thank you for your input.
I don't know if our public wants to speak. Do you wanna-
Sure, I'll speak for the public. Thank you, Martha.
Why not?
Hi, I'm Beth. For y'all who don't know me, I come in the morning. I'm an early person. But I would like to say thank you for everyone for being here and serving our school. I know it's difficult, like Deborah, for you to be here early in the morning and traveling and stuff. So I personally really appreciate your commitment. And I've spoken with Dr. Shaw over the summer, and he just really seems wonderful. And I know our house is very excited. And I would just like to ask you all to, you know, going forward, yes, we had a rough year this year, but to please do everything you can to cooperate with Dr. Shaw. I'm personally disappointed that under this new charter, old charter, in between charter, whatever charter we're going under this day, that Dr. Shaw's not allowed to vote anymore. That's my understanding, because I think the principal is the driver of this ship. And I would just encourage all of you to please follow, you know, our captain's lead here and support him and the students as much as possible. And so thank you very much.
Can I ask a question about that? Do you mind?
No.
Because Dr. Shaw will not be participating in some of the votes, will you be in attendance while those votes are occurring?
Yes.
Yeah, and actually, Dr. Shaw, if I could ask for you to pursue clarification with Karen Cox, because our letter from the superintendent allows us to keep our governance structure through this year, which is what's allowing Pam, for example, and Claire to serve.
So he may be voting this
So
year.
I would presume that means the students and Dr. Shaw can continue to vote for this next year, because we're continuing our former structure. But if you could kind of informally inquire about that, if not, we can write a letter. But the letter we got back says, yes, we can keep our current structure from the superintendent. I personally like the idea that the principal and the students are equal participants in the meeting.
Well, here's why I asked the question, and I think I can throw this out there because I'm not a teacher. Is that oftentimes when the principal are here and he's an advocate for a particular subject, that puts a little bit of pressure on the teachers that work for that principal. Not so much for us, but for them. And in order to get a clear, fair, accurate vote on their opinions, if he is not, and I don't want to speak as if you're not standing here or sitting here, but if Dr. Shaw is not to vote, I just wonder if that's a consideration during votes, if, you know, especially of some sensitive nature, if, you know, just something to consider. Because I just don't want the teachers to feel the pressure.
Well, let's hold that thought, and we can continue to discuss that process.
And
Maybe we'll-
that wasn't given to me by anything. This is just my observation of just having sat here for 2 years.
Thank you. I'll do some digging.
And votes be on paper, or do they need, silent vote, or?
They have to be public.
It does.
Yeah, it
So
has to be public.
balloting is not allowed.
Because that
Okay,
would.
so a name needs to be placed with the vote.
Correct, okay. And the minutes have to reflect anyone who votes against or
So
abstains.
it really wouldn't matter whether he's here or not, he's eventually gonna find out who voted.
Yeah.
Maybe it won't read
The votes are public. Nothing we can do about that.
But in the event he doesn't have a vote, and we would like to know officially what his position on an issue is. maybe there's another way to record that.
Absolutely.
You can ask me. I'm on TV.
You're on TV. Right. You're famous.
Well, I would hope that we can, that there would be very few instances where we would take action that the principal would not support, whether he actually votes on it or doesn't vote on it, but,
Well,
either way, that
and-
could still happen.
Not to belabor this, but you know, what we talked about in my first meeting, and I'm still definitely learning a lot about this, it is a team effort. And you know, I certainly appreciate and need the input, and I share that with the faculty as well. So, you know, I think we're all rowing in the same direction, so I hope that continues. Good questions, though, and I'll get some clarification.
All right, so we are a little past our end time of 8:30. The remaining item is just for your information, which is we do have the schedule for our remaining meetings in the packet. If everybody can please make sure they get those on their calendars. And I would like to thank Donna Davis for her term as secretary, which she is, I'm sure, very sorry to give up. And is there anything else for the good of the cause before we adjourn? All right, thank you, everybody. Our next meeting will be on September 10th.